All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of our Pre-Symposium panel. I'm so excited to dive in. Our next executive symposium is coming up in Houston, Texas, on the topic how to effectively succession plan and promote from within. The date is April 25th from 5 to 8 p.m. If you are in Houston or anywhere near the Houston area, or if you're interested in learning or discussing this topic, come to the executive symposium. We would love to see you there. We host these pre-symposium panels as a way to bring attendees of the event together to discuss what our thoughts are on the topic itself, and just to share different insights and perspectives and give anybody who's watching this an idea as the type of leaders that will be at our upcoming executive symposium. So before we dive into the topic, I'd love to have my three esteemed panelists join me and introduce themselves today. Erica, do you mind going first?
Hi, my name is Erica Gill. I am the Chief People Officer at Good Ranchers. We're a direct-to-consumer meat subscription company.
Very nice. Tonya, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Tonya Pullen. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Sustainability for a five-star family of companies here in Houston.
Cool. And then Christopher, how about yourself?
Hi there, I'm Christopher Albert. I'm the Vice President of Consulting for Azure Group. We are a life sciences professional services organization, consulting with many manufacturers in the pharmaceutical and biotech space.
Very nice. And I'm Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality. When they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders, because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. One of the ways we bring community together is hosting executive symposiums to discuss relevant topics that we are facing as leaders. So let's dive in. So topic for today, how to effectively succession plan and promote from within. So I'd love to just kick off with an initial question just to discuss when it comes to succession planning or promoting from within, whether that means we've got a team member and they're exiting the business, whether that because they're retiring or because they're moving on to something else. How do we go about effectively backfilling that spot? I think sometimes it can be so easy just to try to put a square peg into a round hole, I think is what they call it, where it's like, oh crap, this person's leaving. What do I need to do to fulfill these spots? Like, you're the next person up, you're kind of experienced, throw them in, and we just kind of like hope that they pick up as much as they can in that, I guess, intermediary period before their predecessor walks away. But what have you found to be effective for putting the right people in the right seats to effectively and successfully take over roles when promoting from within? Who wants to lead that off?
Um, oh, go ahead, Erica.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Okay. I think one of the things that's key is not throwing someone into a position that they're not ready for. So often you've seen someone who's really good at a certain role, and then they get promoted and promoted. Uh, it's really important to make sure that you're having conversations with your colleagues and your staff early to understand what are their desires, where do they want to grow their career. And so even if they seem to you like the next person up or the next person who would be a logical fit for someone who's leaving the organization, right? Really make sure that it aligns with what they want, because the worst thing that you can do is put someone into that role thinking you're doing them a favor or giving them a promotion or an opportunity, when actually they get put in a position that makes them uncomfortable, or then, makes them start to look for other opportunities as well.
Very good point. Yeah, Tanya, jump in.
I was going to say, I really appreciate that because I think it is important knowing what your employees' next steps are, like what interests them, because you can't put them in a role that they don't want to be in. But I also, have a reverse on that. Is sometimes I think we hold people back because we think that they need so many of the skills to be promoted. And I think sometimes they can learn those skills or learn some of those things when they have been promoted. So I know in my past experience, I've held someone back and they ended up getting promoted and they thrived and kind of proved me wrong.
Takes a lot of self-awareness to admit that. Good for you, Tanya.
Yeah, I think when I think about it through the lens of when I was in education, I was at a lot of small campuses. And then here we went from small startup to mid-level company very fast. And I think about at the beginning when I got here, we had probably less than 10 employees. And hiring was so important, like knowing who to hire, knowing that the need that we had to ensure that we who we were bringing to the table. But also when I think of that small business again, everybody had to be a generalist in a sense, because everybody had to know. We had such a small company. We were doing these, a lot of times we're saying like we were hitting above our weight for a lot of areas. So we all had to be able to be generalists. And I think that helped when you're talking about a small business with that succession planning, because you had to see, and then you were able to see like, hey, what is your passion? Like, what are you good at? What, as we grew, there were more opportunities. So being able, I think, to hire the right people that then could fill future roles that were coming within the next year, 2 years.
Sure. One other thing on that that's I think really important too. As you're looking and seeing, if you have someone who's going to retire, right? That's not really, it shouldn't be a surprise to someone in the organization. It's something that you can plan for. So I know in my organization, we meet regularly and talk about succession planning. We talk about those people who are either a flight risk for some reason, or maybe nearing the end of their career and in retirement. And in those situations, you look for ways to maybe pair them with a mentee and think about it ahead of time so that it's not suddenly you have 6 weeks or some short term to kind of get the backfill person trained up and ready to go. But they've been working with this person and trying to kind of see themselves in that role for a while. And then you can really prepare for that transition as someone leaves the organization. Now, it's harder if it's a surprise, but for the retirement scenario, it's something that you can usually kind of get ahead of.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's harder when it's a surprise. When you think someone's a flight risk, how do you go about identifying that, Christopher? I think if we all knew everybody's burnout radar, where they were on a flight risk perspective, I think it would adjust the way a lot of people would lead. But oftentimes when someone leaves and it's not because of retirement, it's just because they're moving on to something else. How do you go about are there things that you do to preemptively identify where someone might be a flight risk?
We do actually. I'm meeting with my HR team early next week for this process, but we look at everyone who's in our consulting team. So in my Texas team, we have about 25 people. We list out the full team and then we kind of spread them out and identify, are they like, where are they from a salary perspective? Do we know that they're on the low end of a salary range or high end? Or that they're on the low end in the market? Like we need to be mindful of that could be a risk. It's consulting, right? So have they been on their own for a while? So a single consultant at a client who's isolated, that's a much bigger risk for them wanting to leave the organization than if they're with other Azorians or with other colleagues and brought together. So we look at a number of factors: salary, their recent experience, any feedback or like warnings we get from managers that show like, I don't know, tardiness or kind of dialing out or checking out of the business. And then we just use that tool and kind of put everybody on a matrix, from people who seem to be really happy and stable to people we think might be either more of a risk from a flight standpoint or more of a risk of, if they leave, that's the only person who has a particular skill set. So we kind of identify risk amongst our employees that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those are cool ways of identifying that. I definitely think that's particularly relevant in the consulting space, especially being like isolated, because I would imagine sometimes if someone's doing a really good job as a consultant, that company may just want to hire that person. And yeah, that I would imagine would definitely run its risk. I think in other employer and employment situations, I don't know if it's as cut and dry. I mean, Erica, Tonya, do you have any suggestions or ways of identifying someone who might be a flight risk?
I think Chris brings up really good points. I may need to write some of those notes down. From my experience, performance evaluations and assessments really help us having those conversations. A mid-year or a yearly evaluation is very important, because you should be asking those questions like, these are your strengths and these are your opportunities, and how can I develop you, and what is your future outlook, right? And some people decide, hey, I like where I'm at, I'm doing really good at where I'm at, while others, may express, hey, I'm not happy. And I think if you're leading a team, it should be pretty obvious if someone isn't happy in the position they're in. And I think you should have those conversations with them and kind of figure out where their path needs to go to help prevent that, high risk of just leaving.
Yeah, I think I agree with, I mean, what we've done here at Good Ranchers is the same as what you guys are talking about. But what's crazy and what the difference is with the size of our company, we're not this large corporation who has consultants and we have all these people. We've had to train our leaders to be able to do that consulting, leading, as well as they're doing the job of a software engineer and having to now do all of these things and be able to be sensitive and have feedback every week so that they are able to check in and they are able to see, as well as, going over data with myself and the rest of the team to be able to see, like, is there a decline in work? Did we need to check in on a certain employee? Is something going on in their life? Like stuff like that. So while it's different, like it's still manageable in-house for us to be able to do that. It's just, I mean, we're getting to the place where it's like, okay, now that is a lot on their plate now. But yeah, I think those frequent check-ins and we're very much like are still having those regular check-ins so that we're able to see like, hey, has there been a shift? Has there been something going on? It's still manageable in-house.
Yeah,
Erica, sorry.
we'll jump in, Tonya.
I just want to ask a question. Like, I think we have a lot of that in our organization too, where, some of the employees can do a lot of different jobs. I mean, how are you able to identify when, like, wow, their workload is so extreme that we either have to pivot or we are going to lose? Do you have something that just comes, to your attention that, oh, it's easy to identify when we've just given them too much to handle?
Right now, we do frequent check-ins with all of our employees, from our leaders to our entry level to our mid-level management. We're still small enough that we can do frequent check-ins. The data is still, it's not large enough that we need 10 people, 10 data analysts where we're still able to see all that. So right now it's very manageable. And in those check-ins where we are meeting with our leaders or we're meeting with our employees, we still have that community and small business mentality that we all know each other. We've been with each other since we were a small startup, and now we've just grown that we have that constant. I will say, like, right now it works because we're all in one office. There's no walls. I have an office, but like we all are with each other all the time. So there's frequent conversation, feedback, and check-ins.
Yeah, Erica, I want to talk about that topic too. This concept of like hiring the right people, but also having, the flexibility to take on additional roles. It was a running joke when I was a server way back when, like 10 plus years ago. There was a running joke of how many servers does it take to fix a light bulb? And the answer was, I don't know, it's not my side work. That's a joke. But the point I'm getting at within that is, how can you go about prioritization? Because one thing that I've observed, even in my own work, is where we'll say, hey, we've got opportunities for, team members to work on this type of work and that type of work. And what I'll often find is team members will be really excited about working on some type of work. It's maybe not priority number one, probably not even priority number two. It's more like priority number 5 or 6, but they really love doing it. So they spend all their time on that. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We do, like, it's great if we have time to get those things done. But how do you go about effective prioritization so then people don't get so enamored with the like select handful of work that they find fun and exciting and really avoid the work that they find monotonous or frustrating?
I'm gonna be honest, when like our hiring process is very, and I tell anybody that comes in is like, we're very particular with who comes in because we want people who are bought into Good Ranchers. We're a community here. We hire leaders who also are able to establish that. We're not just like, oh, hey, you've done all of these things, so we want to hire you. Yes, we want people who are highly efficient, are able leaders that are able to do all that, but they are bought into our company, because that's where I think you can't teach that, right? That's something that just kind of comes with who you hire. I say all that to say our leaders we've done a lot of work with the leadership that we have to know like what the priorities are and how to ensure that their teams are know also what the priorities of good ranchers. We have a weekly huddle where we go over like, these are the priorities. This is what customer experience is working on. This is what, so they hear it multiple times, not just from their leader, but from our CEO and founder, from myself during the huddle, from so many different places. So it's like, yes, they have the flexibility to work on the things they love, but also they hear it so many times, and our vision for where we're going, they know like we are a small staff here, but what we're doing is so important. And the vision that we all have to be on the same vision, the same mindset to be able to get these things accomplished. So I think it's constant communication, effective leadership, and honestly, like hiring the right people that we know are bought into, like, this is what we're doing. So, I mean, that's really how we do a lot of the work that we do, how we punch above our weight, how we've grown so much in the last year and a half, last 3 years, is because of those areas.
Yeah, I think the hiring effectiveness is critical, because bringing the right people in from the start who understand how your business flows. Like in my consulting business, it's predominantly virtual. You're either working from home or you're at a client site where the operation and manufacturing is. So we don't have that water cooler chat or see each other every day. It really relies on Zoom calls or text messages or picking up the phone. So bringing people in who understand that, who know that we're a virtual company, who understand that you're coming into a consulting organization. And so doing the billable work that we've been hired to do is always going to be the priority. And then things above and beyond that, improvements internally or things that you think can be done better, whatever it is, that's always like a bonus or extra kind of on top of it. Setting those expectations early is really important. And then having those conversations with regular one-on-ones with your team. But I think one thing that really has been helpful is in the hiring process, even though we do technical consulting and we have a lot of engineers, I'd say 35% of our interview is technical content, and 2/3 of it is all situational, culture fit. Do you have the right mindset to be a consultant? Are you flexible to travel? Do you understand what it's going to be like to work virtually? And for your business or any other business, it's really being honest about who you are, what it's like to be part of it, because you need to find people that you think are going to be a good fit that you want to hire, but it's just as important that they feel exactly the same way. And then you come in with a lot of energy, and then it goes from there.
So interesting. Christopher, Erica, and Tonya, you brought up these different points, and I want to talk about it. So Tonya, you brought up this point about or rather, Christopher brought up the point of not everybody wants to be promoted, which I think is a really, really interesting and a really good point to bring up. Tonya, you brought up the point that sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia of like one skill that we don't necessarily see you exuding. So we think this person's not ready for that promotion yet. And so we hold them back from getting promoted. I also think this applies in the hiring process. I think hiring can either be way too wide open, where it's like, if you got a post, bring them in, we're bringing them on board, to like, well, we have 87 check boxes. They check off 86, but they're missing that 187th check box. I think we got to disqualify them from the candidacy. And you're like, this is a really good candidate. And they've got references. People who are on the team said they loved working with them in the past. So how can we go about finding that happy middle ground of like, saying, hey, I'm willing to overlook this one component of this interview or one component of promoting, because I believe you've got 95% of the goods for making it work, and we think you can develop the rest of it. While still making good decisions, while not like just promoting anybody for the sake of promotion because you need someone to fill the spot, or hiring because you need someone to fill the spot. So how do you go about finding that happy medium? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I have one quick thought on that. So one, I think is critical when you're hiring to make sure it's done in a panel, as diverse of a panel as you can with different viewpoints, different experiences. So we always try to make sure that we have a group of 3 or 4 and varying experiences, as diverse of a group as you can, right? To get a better perspective, not just your perspective on this potential candidate. And then if someone's close, like you said, they check most of the boxes, but maybe not all of them, usually give them the benefit of the doubt and have a very open and honest conversation with them at the get-go that says, hey, we're really excited about this. There's all these ways where you're clearly ready to do this role. Our concern is that you don't have a lot of experience in here. So let's talk about how we're going to make sure that that's not a gap, how we have a plan or a strategy, that we're both aware of it. It's something that we want to work on together. And then, partner with them to fill that in, right? Like be part of the solution. And I think most of the time, folks will be very willing to work with you to try to address it or learn something new. So it's pretty easily overcome if you're just honest and put it right on the table.
Do you also do panel promoting as well?
Sometimes. Depends. Well, actually, yes. Yes, we do. It's always a joint conversation, at least a few people that have that discussion. And then definitely if it's a role that's open and posted for fill, if we choose to fill it internally and it's a promotion, then that's definitely the same, panel. But in general, yeah, it's never, very rarely just a singular decision.
Interesting. I've got some points on panel interviews, but I want to jump to Erica and Tonya. What are your thoughts on ways to not get caught up in the minutia, but at the same time, not just bring on anybody for the sake of just having a warm body and a role? How do you strike that balance?
I think it's always good, like you say, to have a couple of people to help weigh in, on the interview process. But, you know, let's be real. If you ask me, it's after the hiring that's the hard part, because I think we really don't always do a good job of making sure they have everything they need to be successful. Taking that extra time, right? Because then you get tied up in everything that you've got to do. Maybe HR has a million things to do. I just see it so many times that maybe we don't always do the correct follow-up to make them successful. And so sometimes that hiring, maybe you did hire a good candidate that had everything you needed: leadership quality, adaptability. They could show they wanted to learn, but we just didn't give them what they needed to be successful.
I agree. I think the having multiple people on the interview panel is so important. There are times that for certain positions, it's just me and the department manager. And if they loved them and I was like a little iffy about it, I'll have them come in for a second interview. Because I know that I come with a viewpoint that is mine, and I know what I'm looking for. And I'm not just going to say like, oh, just because I said that, like, I have this one box that I didn't check, they're not hireable. They may be the best candidate. So we'll have them come in for a second interview, as well as a third with the CEO as well, to be able to make those decisions.
I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of panel interviews. And here's my reasoning why. I think the challenge that most panel interview environments possess is that it becomes a true democracy. BS. A panel interview should be like, there should be one person who's the judge, jury, and executioner. Having a panel of other people that can like share their thoughts and opinions, that's fine and dandy, but one person who's solely responsible for making the call, and they've got the confidence to make said call. I think when we get into a panel interview scenarios and the person we've like assigned as the main decision maker wants to be nice or courteous, or I want to hear everybody out, or one person did have this one kind of reservation, then it delays the entire hiring process and it just takes forever, and we're not actually able to make any tangible movement forward for both the candidate and for ourselves. So I will say that is my 2 cents around panels. I think panels can be good as long as there's a very clear delineation as who is the judge, jury, and executioner, and do they feel confident, comfortable, and psychologically safe enough to say, all right, whoever decision makers are, or whoever's paneling in the room, I may go against this decision, but I think this is the right person to promote or to hire for whatever. What are your thoughts on that? Y'all can disagree. I like disagree. By the way, I
No,
like
no, no.
disagree.
I love that you said that.
I like the I mean, like I said, I've been on both sides, no panel or panel, but I would say ultimately too, there's always some senior executive that has the last weigh in that's not even sitting in the room. And maybe someone's gotten in their ear. You have no idea. So Garrett, I think sometimes that's the holdup. Maybe not so much the panel, they're all there, they're listening, that sometimes it's another level up that you're waiting on to give that approval.
No, I think the panel is critical just to be mindful that we all have blind spots. So you need those other people's perspective, and someone raised like a red flag that you just didn't pick up for some reason. But ultimately, you're right. If it's, it can get ridiculous. We're like, okay, we're going to all write scores down. We're going to average the scores. We're going to do that for all the candidates. And it becomes silly. Ultimately, someone has to be the hiring manager. It's someone's decision that's going to report to you. Like, you have to make the call. But so I think there's a compromise, right? It's got to be in the middle. Because when you do a bunch of individual conversations, I've been a part of that, and you're like, I just had the same interview like 5 times, right? As opposed to when it's in a panel, people feed off of each other or ask good follow-up questions. And then you have, you can see how they interact with multiple people, which can be important. But you're right, someone has to ultimately be the decision maker. It can't be pure democracy when it comes to the hiring process. And I mean, hiring inevitably is flawed. You're trying to base a decision on a very short interaction with someone. So we're all doing the best we can, but the proof comes out way after hiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see it in a different lens, and I think it's just like the different leadership styles that we all have and we all come to the table with. But I'm gonna be honest, like, I want buy-in from my team. I want buy-in from the department leader who's going to be leading this person. So if they're like, no, 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 and I'm like, no, I want them on your team. I'm not going to push. I'm not, yes. Am I going to try to like, hey, let's look at this one more time. Let's have a second interview. Maybe they'll grow on you. But I also want your buy-in to be able to lead this person effectively. And that starts with the interview, as well as like it's vice versa. Like if I see something that this person is like, no, they're the best, and I'm like, they have 1 year of experience, like that's not gonna work. That equity has to be there for us to be able to have that transparent conversation, and for them to trust that I want what's best for you and your department, and vice versa, us all wanting the best for our company.
No, I like it. That's cool. No, that's good. And that's the thing. One of the best parts about having panels is like, it's good to have that disagreement. Nothing's more boring than having everyone be like, well, I second that, or I third that. So it's good to have the disagreement.
Yeah.
I want to talk about promotions when we realize we messed up. And this is a scenario where the individual, so different than what Christopher was bringing up before, where he was saying, hey, not everybody wants to get a promoted position. Let's say an individual thinks they're ready to ride with the bulls. They're like, I can take on the Catalina wine mixer. Let's make it happen. And you put them in the position and they are struggling. And you're like, oh gosh, do they have the self-awareness to recognize that they're struggling? I don't know. How do I maybe walk this back? What have you found to be an effective? Have you ever effectively gone through a demotion where you were like, hey, we thought this would work out, this isn't working out, but they were great in their previous roles? Have you ever been able to successfully say like, hey, we thought this would work, it's not, just go back to your old role, you were doing great in that, and like everyone will be happy? Like, I'd be curious to know, what are your thoughts on the uh-oh, we promoted the wrong person?
I can go. Oh, so so one thing that we did, because we didn't want that to happen, is, because that's always an uncomfortable like conversation, very transparent, is, hey, giving them like small tasks at a time. Like and we talk about this all the time, our mailroom is our customer service department. So we hire the best of the best for our customer service, knowing that at some point they are going to be in a different position. So if we spot people in there that we're like, yes, 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 like you've got it. We may like operations may give them like one project. Hey, let's see how they do. Hey, our marketing team, if we know that they got their degree in marketing, hey, try this out. See how they do. They may decide, and this is what we talk about at the beginning, is like, hey, if you don't like this, don't feel like you have to just say yes to everything, or don't feel like this is your way out of customer experience, because just try it, see if you like it. And if you do, we may give you another one. We try that for 30 days. And if it's successful, then hey, guess what? We have this position open, da 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 da. But we have that very transparent conversation at the beginning of don't be upset if you get at the end of this 30 days and it doesn't work. Because this does not mean that you have failed, that you're not good, that you haven't. So we try to, so we don't get into that position. We give them time and customer experience. They have to be there at least 6 months and then be able to, hey, let's try some things out and see if they're open to it, if they've shown like expertise in a different area.
Okay, two follow-up questions on that
Yeah.
because I wanna dive in on this a little bit. One, what if they're not good, but they think they're good? And two, what if when you ask them to take on the additional responsibilities, they ask for commensurate compensation for taking on said responsibilities? And then you end up realizing that they're not that good. Do you backtrack the compensation? Like, I guess, yeah, how do you handle that?
So the first part is we in our interview process, we talk about like, hey, we're very transparent here. This is who we are. We have just gone from small business to this mid-size, but we are not there yet. So we're very transparent. Our feedback is weekly. It's very transparent. So those conversations have been built in. We've been getting them to this place where we're having these very transparent conversations. So at the beginning, we're able to have those conversations if it's not working. Like, not the beginning, but we've had multiple conversations of like, hey, okay, you tried this one. This is what happened. Maybe we can try another one, or we can, what do you think? I would put it onto them like, hey, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts on it? And we can go from there in the conversation, but they know it's in their best interest. We don't want you a year down the road, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're in this position you don't like. And that's what the conversation is, because we really don't want anybody in a position they are not skilled for. The second part, we let them know at the get-go, hey, we're starting you out on this project. You're still going to be in customer experience, or you're still going to be in the position you're in. Nothing's changing. We're not asking you to do two jobs. We're not asking you to do customer experience and also do blah, 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 XYZ. Hey, try this out and see what you think. You can do it at your desk. You can do it in the spot.
So you take responsibilities off of their plate so then they have commensurate time to work on the new responsibilities?
Yeah. Yes.
I think sometimes, or it's, in some areas it might be stretch assignments. Like you're doing a really great job, but we need to allow you to do something additional to be able to help us evaluate you for, that next promotion. But candid conversations are big when you're promoting. We're talking about succession planning. So I hope, you would be highly involved in where that person's skill levels are, where they're wanting to be promoted at. Do they sometimes fail? You ask if there's some awareness. I think if you're having those conversations with them, they're able to identify, I might be failing at this.
Yeah.
And maybe you realize that, but how do you help pick them back up or help get them in a position where they're still successful, even if that promotion is a demotion, or maybe a lateral move somewhere else where they could be successful, because just moving up isn't always the best. Lateral is a promotion too, because you're doing other skill sets.
Yeah.
On that point, Tonya, I do think you brought up the great point about active feedback. I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of companies make mistakes where they're not giving active feedback, and then all of a sudden it gets to 3 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road, and they're like, whoa, 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 this is highly underperforming. Put this person back. And it's like, why didn't you wait after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month to tell them that they weren't performing? Like, why didn't we correct the train tracks immediately? They're like, well, I've been too busy. I've been putting out fires constantly. I think sometimes businesses get so caught up in the firefighting, and then all of a sudden it's like 6 months later, and like, holy smokes, this person's not performing well in their role, and they need to be immediately put back to whatever role they were at before, and not in this one.
Yeah,
Garrett, I just want to ask, throughout my years, especially my younger years, feedback was always there and people had a directness about it. But I just feel like there's been a change in generational shift where we're softer on that feedback and people don't want to have, or they just kind of go around those hard conversations or that feedback where they feel if they're too direct, oh my gosh, is someone going to raise this as a red flag to HR? Did I say the right things? I think it's changed a little bit. I don't know how everyone else feels about it.
I feel like, at least with my current company, that the feedback has never been more direct or quicker than where I am now. So I think it depends on the company, because I've also worked at places where everyone seems scared, right, to do that feedback. And that's one of the big challenges. One, you're working with human beings. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but in the long term, if you're not telling someone that they're struggling or helping them identify that, you're really doing them a disservice. So it's a really hard conversation. Garrett, you brought up like probably one of the most difficult things about being a leader is like, one, you've set someone up to fail, not intentionally, but you've put them in a bad position. And clearly you or whoever your team is have also made a mistake, right? So you have to take accountability for your own actions and work with this person to dial it back, maybe reduce some responsibilities. And at the same time, one thing to try to take the emotion out of it is just try to use data whenever possible. Hey, we gave you this new role. This was the expectation to complete this, and this. I see that you're really only able to do this part of it, right? Like, we need to figure something out. Do we need to take something off, or maybe we need more time to grow into this role? It's tricky. But the other part of what you said, Garrett, and I would advocate for the employee in this situation, if they come to me and they're like, hey, I'm doing this work and this, and this, that's more reflective of a manager, and I need to be compensated for it, like, they're right. They need to be compensated for the work that they're doing. And if they're doing things that are outside the job description and above and beyond, then that's a real conversation that needs to take place on that. So there's no right answer. It's a really tricky, and it's a unique situation to each individual based on that performance and what that unique situation would be. But having trusting relationships and being able to provide candid feedback to your team is just critical to success. And while we always hope that it's positive feedback that you're giving and you're building people up, sometimes it's about identifying those weaknesses and growth areas.
Do you ever have areas where you do like a 90-day trial in a position to see how they're doing? I think I've seen that before. And that seems to help because you can really, engage and see and really have like a game plan in those 90 days.
We do a 90-day review with all new hires that really just kind of assesses cultural fit and everything, just to have a quick performance conversation and have it documented. But I think that's a neat idea to talk about other roles or promotions, to do something and just have it like knowing formally we're going to write or have a conversation at this time frame. It's a good idea.
I'm a huge fan of, oh yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sorry. I will say we've done a 90-day trial for some positions. When I like earlier when I said that we do like, hey, let's try out these, it's more like data position. I wouldn't ever do that with like a leadership position or a manager position. I wouldn't be like, hey, let's try this out and see if you're, okay. It's definitely like, yes, internal positions, but never something for management. We have done, not for management, but we have done some 90-day trials where we do Let them be in that role and see if they like it, see if that's what they want to do. And then again, it goes back to the candid conversations of like, hey, what did you think of that? Was it your skill set? Bringing the data in. And sometimes they're like, that was not for me. And that's okay. That's totally fine. Just finding the right fit.
Yeah, y'all have brought up really good points. By the way, Tanya, I'm a huge fan of the 90-day trial. I think that's I think in setting the expectation that this is a trial, no guaranteed. And so, like, if we do need to walk it back, it's like, great, we weren't expecting that you would necessarily be in this new position moving forward, but at least we trialed it and we could like assess it out. And after 90 days, if we do, then it's hurrah, huzzah, we can celebrate. And, everyone can, update their LinkedIn profiles and we can get excited and all that
Yeah.
other fun stuff that goes along with that, but not until the trial is over. I'm a big fan of that. I think it works well because then it really does, like, it helps preserve egos and just makes people feel better about this. Because, like, Erica, you brought up this point of uh this concept of, maybe we'll take some responsibilities off your plate, so we give you new responsibilities, see how good you are with that. It makes me think of, like, could that potentially be a flight risk if we end up determining, like, hey, we tried you in operations. Unfortunately, maybe some of these responsibilities, we might try something else with you in a different department sometime down the line. But I would imagine, to Christopher's point about potential flight risk, that might be an indicator right there, because that might be an ego tarnisher. Have you found any ways to, like, keep the ego excited even when you have to deliver bad news?
I honestly feel like it's all in, first of all, the people that you have at the table. When we interview anybody, humility is one of the top values that we have for anybody coming into the company. And we discuss that. Like, what does that look like? How is it connected with collaboration? How's it connected with, and so I say that to say, like, when in the conversation we say, like, hey, is this something you want to do, we talk about that. Like, we don't, it's not willy-nilly that we make these decisions, or like, hey, because we don't want to lose any of our employees. So if it does get to the point where, hey, we tried this out, it's not working, we talk about it. And we talk about, like, hey, what are the lessons you learned? What are the what can we do moving forward, and so we haven't had any backlash from it. I think it's a conversation that I think we have enough equity with our employees. We're at a space with our employees that we have that equity, that we are able to have these conversations. And ego, it's not about ego. It's really about pushing the work forward. And we are really delicate with not delicate, but we are really sensitive to the needs of our employees. So that's why we also don't make these decisions just off a whim, like, oh, I feel like this person would be great here. No, it's multiple conversations. It's the needs of the company. It's, will this person be okay if they do have to, if moving to operations is not a good fit? And so if it's just based on the employee, honestly. And
Yeah, because I don't think all larger companies are able to do that.
Right.
And especially if they go really, really fast, you're
right,
going in so many different directions.
right.
And so it sounds like you're setting yourself up for success as you continue to grow that company. But very different for different sizes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, everybody, this has been such a
Yep.
good pre-symposium panel. I feel like we've hit some really good topics as it pertains to succession planning and promoting from within. Erica, Tanya, Christopher, do you have any final points that you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off, as it pertains to promoting from within and succession planning?
I just think that it's critical that you're always looking to grow your own folks before you hire. Sometimes you need an outside perspective, and it's important to bring fresh opinions and different perspectives into an organization. But first and foremost, retention and growth of your own staff has always been a priority in the places that I've enjoyed working. And I think it's critical leadership behavior to make sure that you're always looking to see how you can get the most out of your staff. How do you keep them learning? How do you keep them challenged? How do you keep them engaged? And that should be one of the things that any leader is thinking about. And the easiest way to measure it's retention, right? If you're doing that, if you have a good culture around it, people want to stay as part of your team.
Yeah, I agree. So session planning is huge with a strategy, and especially if you're encouraging and engaging, promoting within, because that only helps drive the future success of your business.
I think the foundation of hiring from within is who you hire and the culture that you've established, and really ensuring that the employees that you have and the leaders that you have are also bought into the culture. Because if you do that and you know what you're hiring for, you know who you're hiring for, you've embedded like the hardest part of the job, which is whatever you're looking for. If it's perseverance, if it's hard work, if it's collaboration, humility, if you know that you have already done that hard part and you have this set of people, now is the skill set that we can do something with. I can teach you how to look at a data sheet. I can teach you how to talk to a customer. What I can't teach you is what's on the inside. And so I think that's the hardest part to do is having a culture that you can stand on, and people that you can promote and you can pour into, you can mentor, you can really develop to be something so much greater, leaving our company or moving up in our company than who we hired at the beginning.
Amazing. Well, everybody, thanks for being here. Erica, Tonya, Christopher, excellent insights during our pre-symposium panel today. If you're watching this and you're thinking, I'd love to meet these three great leaders, or I'd love to talk more about this topic, come to our executive symposium in a few weeks, April 25th, 5 to 8 p.m. in Houston. Send me a direct message if you'd like to come, and we'd love to see you there. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a great